Hello, this is Max. In this episode you will learn what was happening at the Chernobyl nuclear power plant at the time of the disaster. Don't forget to subscribe. In a dimly lit apartment, Valery Legasov records his thoughts on the Chernobyl nuclear disaster. He expresses his disdain for Anatoly Dyatlov, believing him deserving of death for his actions. After finishing the recording, Legasov adds it to his collection and hides it outside, avoiding detection in a nearby parking lot from where he is constantly being watched. Returning indoors, he checks his watch, finishes a cigarette, and prepares extra food for his cat. At precisely 1 hour, 23 minutes, and 45 seconds, he does the unthinkable. This scene then shifts to Pripyat in the Ukrainian Soviet Socialist Republic, approximately 2 years and 1 minute earlier. It's a meticulously planned community serving the Chernobyl nuclear power plant. In an apartment, Lyudmila Ignatenko, pregnant and experiencing morning sickness, smiles as she vomits, interpreting it as a positive sign. She makes herself a cup of tea, with the power plant visible in the distance. Suddenly, there's a flash at the plant, followed by a larger, more intense one. The shockwave shakes the entire apartment as Lyudmila returns to the living room, awakening her husband Vasily. Together, they witness the power plant now ablaze, casting a blue light into the sky, prompting the town to stir with alarm. In the depths of Reactor 4's control room, we see Anatoly Dyatlov, stunned into silence by the unfolding catastrophe. Upon hearing reports of a fire in the turbine hall, he deduces that the control system tank must have exploded. However, Foreman Panko bursts in, claiming that the core has exploded. Dyatlov brushes off the assertion as shock, while Shift Chief Alexander Akimov, sensing the severity of the situation, tries to reassure Panko that an RBMK reactor cannot explode. Despite Akimov's efforts, the control rod mechanism remains unresponsive. After this, Dyatlov departs to manually lower them from the reactor's secondary control room. As he exits into a nearby corridor, he notices shattered windows and black mineral lumps on the ground below but pays them little attention. A distressed operator contacts the Pripyat Fire Department, and Vasily is summoned to duty. Despite Lyudmila's concern, he assures her that he's only dealing with a roof fire. In the depths of Reactor Building 4, Panko encounters a scene of utter devastation. His attempt to gauge the radiation levels fails due to the limitation of their dosimeters, which can register beyond 3.6 Röntgen. Moreover, it is revealed that their high-range dosimeter had been obliterated in the explosion. The severity of the danger becomes painfully clear when Panko's colleague, Gorbachenko, reveals radiation burns on his face. After this, Panko swiftly orders an evacuation and sets out to locate the pump operatives Valery Kodymchuk and Viktor Detyurenko. However, he only manages to find mechanical engineer Alexander Yankov before succumbing violently to acute radiation syndrome, becoming the first of many to suffer this tragic fate. After this, Yankov takes charge of the search and discovers Detyurenko outside the pump room, grievously injured with burns, while Kodymchuk's body is buried under the wreckage. Returning to the control room, Dyatlov learns from Akimov that his attempt to lower the control rods was ineffective. Akimov informs him that 2 trainees, Viktor Proskoryakov and Alexander Kudryavtsev, have been dispatched to manually lower them in the reactor hall. Dyatlov then sends pump engineer Boris Stolyarchik to restart the water flow into the reactor core to prevent a meltdown. When asked about the radiation level, Dyatlov dismisses the information, taking 3.6 Röntgen as the accurate reading, describing it as not great, not terrible. Despite the escalating crisis, Akimov tries to reassure his colleague, reactor engineer Leonid Toptunov, that they followed the correct procedures. As the fire department tackles the massive blaze, Vasily's colleague, Misha, notices a lump of the same black mineral observed by Dyatlov earlier. Ignoring warnings, he examines it and experiences a strange pain in his hand. Meanwhile, Proskoryakov and Kudryavtsev encounter Yankov carrying Detyurenko's limp form. Realizing Detyurenko's condition is beyond hope, Yankov agrees to assist them in accessing the reactor core. Holding the door open for them, Yankov watches as they enter, only to witness a horrifying scene illuminated by the lethal glow of the exposed reactor core. The intense radiation quickly incapacitates them both. Proskoryakov barely makes it back to the control room to report the reactor's destruction before succumbing to severe nausea. Despite the mounting evidence, Dyatlov still refuses to acknowledge the reactor's explosion, instructing Akimov to call in the day shift and inform the local Communist Party executive. Outside, Vasily steps in to handle Misha's hose after Misha collapses in excruciating pain. When a first aider removes Misha's glove, they discover his hand flesh seemingly corroded by an unknown force. Meanwhile, Vasily observes several colleagues with what appear to be burns, despite not being near the fire. In Pripyat, some of Lyudmila's neighbors gather on a nearby railway bridge to watch the fire, unaware of the radioactive ash falling on them. Elsewhere, Dr. Svetlana Zinchenko worries about the hospital's readiness to treat radiation sickness patients, finding it woefully ill-equipped and the senior doctors ill-informed. Meanwhile, Director Viktor Bryukhanov and Chief Engineer Nikolai Fomin arrive at the plant, furious that a routine safety test has turned into a major incident. Dyatlov insists they are dealing with just a hydrogen tank explosion, a roof fire, and a minor radiation release. Meanwhile, Stalyarchuk realizes the true extent of the explosion and finds Yankov injured. After this, Yankov requests a final cigarette. As firefighters douse the fire, water seeps into the room, revealing the devastation. Meanwhile, Stalyarchuk reports the reactor's irreparable damage, but Akimov, refusing to accept it, orders Toptunov to open all coolant valves manually despite Stalyarchuk's objections. Outside the plant, the day shift, led by Deputy Engineer Anatoly Sitnikov, watches the burning reactor 4. They realize the situation surpasses a tank explosion, and Sitnikov learns that no one knows the radiation levels due to the missing high-range dosimeter. After realizing this, he heads to Reactor Building 2 to retrieve it. Meanwhile, Bryukhanov chairs a meeting of the local party executive and repeats Dyatlov's assurances that they are dealing with nothing more than a mild accident. However, one of the executive members, Petrovich, openly challenges his claims, pointing out that the air around the reactor building is glowing and that several of the firefighters are obviously suffering from radiation sickness. At this point, the executive's oldest member, Shorov, delivers a rousing speech, emphasizing that their job is not to quibble about the extent of the accident. With Mikhail Gorbachev himself informed of the disaster, their goal should be to prevent any information about the disaster from getting out of Pripyat, so that the people of the Soviet Union can continue with their work without worrying about such insignificant things as exploding nuclear plants. After Sherov's uplifting speech, the executive members leave the meeting with renewed hope. Sitnikov arrives to meet with Bryukhanov, Fomin, and Dyatlov, reporting that their high-range dosimeter malfunctioned but they borrowed a mid-range one from the fire department. It is revealed that the radiation level is far higher than 3.6 Röntgen, possibly exceeding 200 Röntgen. In addition, Sitnikov's inspection around Reactor Building 4 reveals graphite lumps, indicating a core explosion. 3 idiots don't believe him and make him go to the roof to make sure the reactor is intact. As Sitnikov reluctantly takes over the task, he, like Akimov and two before him, faces a grim fate. Exposed to lethal radiation, Sitnikov joins the ranks of those succumbing to the consequences. The gravity of the situation becomes apparent when Dyatlov is taken away, and soon several firefighters, including Vasily, fall victim to acute radiation sickness, revealing the full extent of the devastation. Meanwhile, in Pripyat, Dr. Zinchenko rushes to the hospital as the first casualties from the Chernobyl accident start arriving. In Moscow, Valery Legasov receives a call from Deputy Chairman Boris Sherbina, informing him of his appointment to a committee overseeing the accident response. This scene then shifts to children heading to school in Pripyat, unaware of the encroaching radiation cloud, as a bird falls dead from the sky, a silent victim of the disaster. If you are interested in such films, please proceed to the next video on the screen, and also share your thoughts about this film in the comments. Give us a like and subscribe. Goodbye.